Imagine a person with an IQ of 140. They can diagnose rare medical conditions in seconds, build fault-tolerant software systems, or argue complex corporate law with surgical precision. Now give that exact same person a brokerage account or a credit card. Within 5 years, they've managed to panic sell their stock portfolio at the absolute bottom of a market dip, sink $50,000 into a friend's speculative crypto startup, and buy a luxury SUV they can barely afford, all while convincing themselves it was a calculated strategic hedge. How is this possible? Why do some of the smartest people in the room make shockingly bad money decisions? Here's the cold, hard truth. Managing money is not a math problem. It's a psychological one. High intelligence gives you the ability to process complex information fast. But when it comes to personal finance and investing, high IQ often acts as a supercharger for self-deception. Intelligence doesn't protect you from emotional bias. It just makes you vastly better at rationalizing your mistakes after you make them. Today, we're unpacking the psychological engines that drive smart people to make terrible financial choices, and how you, whether you're trading in volatile markets or trying to build long-term wealth, can outsmart your own brain. To understand why smart people fail with money, we have to look at how our brains process value. Behavioral economist and Nobel laureate Richard Thaler introduced a concept that explains why even brilliant accountants act irrationally: mental accounting. Logically, $1 is always worth $1. Money is fungible. But human psychology completely rejects this basic rule of math. When you earn $1,000 working extra hours at your job, your brain assigns that money to a mentally protected bucket. You treat it with caution. But when you receive a $1,000 tax refund or a sudden stock dividend, your brain tags it as found money or play money. Smart investors fall into this trap constantly. They'll treat their core salary with extreme discipline, putting it into low-cost index funds or high-yield savings accounts. But the moment they realize a sudden gain on a trade, they throw that profit into hyper-volatile, high-risk assets because it's just house money anyway. In reality, loss is loss, no matter which mental bucket the cash came from. This brings us to the most dangerous force in behavioral finance: loss aversion, pioneered by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. Psychologically, the pain of losing $1,000 is roughly twice as intense as the pleasure of gaining $1,000. For a smart person, loss aversion triggers an even nastier secondary effect: ego protection. If you view yourself as intelligent, admitting you made a mistake on an investment hurts your self-image. So what do smart retail investors do when a stock they bought drops 30%? Instead of cutting their losses and reallocating capital, they double down. They invent complex, narrative-driven justification models to prove the market is wrong. And they are right. They call it averaging down. But in many cases, it's just the sunk cost fallacy wearing a suit and tie. Their intelligence isn't saving them from a bad trade. It's supplying them with endless excuses to stay in a losing position until their portfolio is destroyed. Mental accounting makes us spend gains foolishly, and loss aversion forces us to hold on to disastrous losses to protect our pride. But how do these mind traps spill over into everyday life, market cycles, and personal budgeting? That is where things get even more fascinating and expensive. So we've seen how mental accounting and ego protection sabotage our logic. But how do these abstract behavioral economics concepts manifest in the high-stakes world of everyday budgeting and volatile market investing? There are 3 primary blind spots where even the sharpest minds consistently derail their financial future. The first blind spot is overconfidence bias. When a smart person succeeds in their professional career, say as a surgeon, lawyer, or software engineer, they develop a strong, well-earned sense of competence. They believe, I solved hard problems in my industry, so analyzing a financial market should be simple. This creates what psychologists call the illusion of control. In medicine or engineering, more information and effort directly lead to better outcomes. But the stock market is a complex adaptive system driven by millions of human emotions, macroeconomic shifts, and unexpected black swan events. When high achievers enter volatile markets, they over-research. They draw technical analysis lines, read every quarterly report, and build elaborate spreadsheets. They mistake information collection for risk management. In behavioral finance, this is known as the Dunning-Kruger overlap in complex systems. Because they are genuinely intelligent, smart people refuse to believe they are susceptible to market noise. They trade more frequently, take on excessive leverage, and underperform simple, boring, low-cost index funds over time. The second blind spot is complexity bias. This is our uncanny human tendency to look at a complex solution and assume it must be superior to a simple one. Smart people are trained to solve complex problems. As a result, when presented with a simple, automated wealth-building strategy, like save 20% of your income, buy broad market index funds, and hold for 30 years, their brain instinctively rebels. It feels too basic. It lacks the intellectual stimulation they crave. Wall Street understands this psychological flaw intimately. Entire financial sectors are engineered specifically to exploit the ego of smart investors. Banks package complex, high-fee financial products with sophisticated-sounding names like capital-protected structured notes or algorithmic yield strategies. Smart investors flock to these products because understanding them feels like a badge of honor. In reality, complexity in finance is rarely a feature. It's almost always a mechanism designed to hide excessive management fees and transfer risk onto your balance sheet. The third blind spot hits everyday budgeters and high earners alike. Confusing income with wealth. Income is what you bring in today. Wealth is what you keep, compound, and retain for freedom tomorrow. Smart people often land high-paying roles early in their careers. However, a high IQ does not automatically grant emotional regulation against social comparison. This leads directly to lifestyle creep, the insidious tendency to expand your living expenses in direct proportion to your rising salary. When you earn $200,000 a year, but spend $195,000 to maintain the status signals expected in your professional peer group, you aren't building wealth. You're running on a gilded hamster wheel. You are one layoff, market correction, or burnout episode away from total financial insolvency. Now that we've exposed the psychological traps, how do we fix them? How do you safeguard your hard-earned capital from your own brain? You don't need a higher IQ. You need better systems. Here are 3 tactical behavioral interventions designed to outsmart your cognitive biases. In behavioral economics, a pre-commitment device is a decision you make in a calm, unemotional state that prevents you from making a destructive decision in an emotional state. If you rely on willpower to budget or invest every month, you will fail when market volatility spikes or when decision fatigue sets in. The fix: automate your entire financial engine. Set up automatic transfers on payday that route money directly into index funds, debt repayment, and high-yield savings before you ever see it in your checking account. By removing human intervention, you remove ego, fear, and greed from the execution loop. Whether you are buying an expensive luxury item on impulse or impulse trading during market turmoil, Emotion demands immediate action. The fix: implement a non-negotiable 24-hour cooling-off rule for any unbudgeted transaction over $250 or any investment trade outside your quarterly rebalancing plan. Furthermore, enforce a mandatory written thesis. Before executing any stock trade, force yourself to write down 3 specific sentences in a journal. First, why am I buying or selling this asset right now? Second, under what specific conditions will I admit I was wrong and exit? Third, am I acting on objective data or reacting to recent price action? When you force your brain to translate emotional impulses into written prose, your prefrontal cortex kicks in, instantly reducing foolish trades driven by loss aversion or FOMO. The ultimate reason smart people make disastrous money moves is that they tie their intellectual identity to their financial outcomes. If a trade goes bad, they feel stupid, so they double down to prove they're smart. Accept this truth early. The market does not know you exist. It does not care about your degree, your job title, or your IQ score. Treat your investments not as a stage to showcase your brilliant mind, but as a dull, systematic process designed to buy back your future time. True financial intelligence isn't about outsmarting the market. It's about controlling yourself. Being smart is a massive advantage in life. But in the world of money, temperament will beat intelligence every single day of the week. As the great investor Benjamin Graham once famously noted, the investor's chief problem, and even his worst enemy, is likely to be himself. Stop trying to prove how clever you are with complex trading schemes or status-driven lifestyle spending. Simplify your portfolio, automate your savings, conquer your ego, and let time and compounding do the heavy lifting for you. If this episode made you rethink a past money choice, hit that like button and subscribe to Money Mindshift for deep dives into financial psychology every week. And I want to hear from you down in the comments. What's one smart financial decision you made in the past that ended up completely backfiring? Let's learn from each other's psychological blind spots down below. Until next time, keep your mind focused, your systems automated, and your ego out of your portfolio.